LPL or LCK, who is the better region? Jinter, it's time to trigger about half of the League of Legends fan base. No matter who we pick, people always get upset. We're going to upset some people. I can't wait. Santorin retiring, the first of many, perhaps. We will discuss. Also, Golden Guardians just absolutely falling apart. I don't really want to talk about it, but I think we have to. Episode 141 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT250. I guess we gotta start with Golden Guardians, Jinter. I don't even know what to say. So, okay, like a week ago, you joined Discord right after the games, right? And you're like, let's talk about it. And what did I say to you?
You didn't want to talk about it.
And you know what? I've had the whole week. So I actually said I want to save it for podcast just because I like to keep our conversations like genuine. I don't want to just copy paste the same conversation that we had a week ago. All this to say, I've had like a week to think about what I'm going to say for this episode. And my coping mechanism is to just completely forget that it even happened. I still don't know what to say about this series other than I'm mad. Like there's so many emotions, Jinter, that came from this series. We waited a month for this. A month, man. I'm just mad. Are you
Yeah.
mad? Does this bother you? Like what?
Well, I mean, I'm not that mad. I think, as you know, and as maybe some people who know who watch this podcast, I'm not super invested in the NA versus EU narrative. It's fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, but I just think, I mean, if we want to get into it right away, I think Golden Guardian's biggest problem, and this is kind of just guesswork on my end, but it felt like they were overconfident. You heard in all of the interviews and some of the videos leading up to the series. There was even like some article with Huhi where he was just saying like, "Oh yeah, Licorice is playing really, really well. He's going to dunk on everybody." And it felt like Golden Guardians took that same approach in the draft phase. And once again, we are not people who always like to preach about the draft on this podcast and say, "Oh, the draft won or lost the games." But I think Golden Guardians was just drafting like absolute animals. They
I
did
mean,
not.
maybe, but like, who cares, man? They played like shit.
I
Like,
mean,
who cares about the draft? I mean, sorry, go ahead. Talk,
it
talk about the draft.
I mean, 100% matters, especially in game 2 and game 3. When you are blind picking Cassante in the first phase, when you know Adam has known counters to it, especially the Garen, I'm sorry, I cannot subscribe to the opinion that NA got cheesed or Golden Guardians got cheesed by the Garen pick. That is not true whatsoever. Everybody
Oh,
knows that
100%.
everybody knows that Adam plays Garen. Everybody knows that Garen is a known Cassante counter. And Garen, I think, to me, he is the fundamental checker in League of Legends when you're playing against him. If you have good fundamentals, Garen is the easiest champion to beat in the game. But if you play the game out and you start to lose control of your basic fundamentals in the game, you will lose the game. And I think you saw that, especially in the game 2, where it looked like the Garen counterpick wasn't working very well. And you kind of just saw a big breakdown in Golden Guardians' positioning and team fighting around the Garen, where they just kind of took the approach of ignoring the Garen as opposed to continue to ram, pressure down the Garen's throat. And they let him back into the game. And you pretty much saw that Garen, once he reaches 2 items or 1.5 items, he one-shots carries. And I just think that Golden Guardians did a really poor job of, one, drafting, and two, actually just playing out the games. And especially in those games 2 and games 3, there was a huge breakdown in fundamentals from Golden Guardians.
Okay, when it comes to the cheese thing, 100% agree. There's no way you could ever say we got cheese. Everyone in the world knew what was coming. We talked about it. We knew that he played. Everyone knew. Let's just leave it at that. So I completely agree there. When it comes to playing against a Garrett, they did not respect it whatsoever. What tilts me, the reason why I said I was mad, and this is when I'm watching the series, if I say in my head, I'm watching and I'm going, you can't, what you're doing is illegal, you're going to die, and I know it before the player knows it, the pro player, that's when I know like they're just not mentally in the game. Like anyone knows, I don't care how often you see Garen in pro play. Everyone still knows what Garen does. The champion has existed for like a decade. Like I don't care if you don't see Garen that often. It's still no secret, especially to a pro player, what he is going to do to you. When I saw Stixay walk up to him when they were like going to try to dive him, Stixay should know well that he's just about to get insted 100-0. Like that's no surprise. So like that's part of where my anger and frustration comes from is that I can see they're about to die before they do, which is that's when you know that they're not themselves, right? And I think that's why I'm so mad is that I guess I just feel stupid that I convinced myself they would fix all the issues because they had a month to prepare. It didn't matter,
I mean,
right?
and
I
that's why I say it was a breakdown of fundamentals, is because the simple things Golden Guardians was doing wrong. It'd be a completely different story if this was a series similar to the best of fives that we saw at the end of the playing stage for the qualification series between Wales, GAM, and BDS and PSG. A lot of that was sort of misexecution, during fights. But on the Golden Guardian side of things, it wasn't just a misexecution. It was they pretty much had no idea what they were doing for the majority of the series. And I think part of that did start out with the drafts they played. I mean, like I said, we're not going to get too far into it, but it did feel like Golden Guardians was trying to be a bit too cute with the whole saving counterpick for support and whatnot, and whipping out some of, I don't think people would call them, off meta picks. I mean, yes, they definitely are off meta picks, but we are no stranger to the Amumu from Huhi. That is a fairly common pick when you look at 2023 as a whole. The Nico, on the other hand, was definitely a bit different. I was sort of defaulting to the co-streams in sort of the sense of how the matchup plays out, because Doublelift at the time said like, oh, Nico's actually a really, really strong laning pick. And so the fact that they were going Kalista Nico, Doublelift and Sneaky were kind of indicating how that's a really strong laning matchup into another strong laning combo of the Ezreal Rakan. So I think that Golden Guardians, they just got a little bit too lost in the sauce. And then once I mean, it was also clear, it was obvious that they got tilted. Like in game two, when the game started going wrong, it was very obvious that they were getting tilted.
Yeah, I think game 2 is when I actually started to feel mad because game 1, I remember thinking I felt like panic, like, "Uh-oh." Like, you could tell that, like, this team hadn't cleaned shit up, but, like, it was just one of those wash games where it was like, "Oh, shit just all went wrong really quick." You can't really look too much into such a fluky game like this. Maybe they turn around, and they start turning it around in game 2, right? Game 2 started really well, and then you start to feel it slip away, mostly because of Huhi in that game, and that's when I started to get mad, was because I realized like we're about to throw this game. I don't know if you felt that way watching it. I felt game 2 when we had 3k gold lead at around, I was like maybe 10-12 minutes range, and it just stayed around 3k for like, I don't know, a really long time, and then you knew that they were going to throw that when their lead just kept not getting bigger. A lot of it was just who he playing Nico was just terrible. When he tried to pretend he was a minion in the middle of the lane,
It was those.
you're not respecting Nuke or BDS at all being able to count minions. Like, this is not a new tech, right? This has been happening the whole I don't know, since Nico was reworked. This isn't anything new anymore. And just completely respecting the other team's ability to know what you're going to do. It's been done a million times. So that was pretty disappointing. And then there was a Baron fight where his engage was just completely useless. Like, it did nothing. The Nico pick was so bad. And I understand that part of who he playing like who he is letting him cook and play some random ass crap. Unfortunately, what comes of it sometimes is you see him sprint it, and that's what we saw in this one. And that's where I got mad, was because the one game where we started playing well, it never felt like we were able to close it out. And so that's where I started to get mad, was game 2. And then game 3, I guess that's where I felt helpless, because game 3 wasn't close either.
Yeah, game three, they just pretty much got annihilated. I mean, they didn't get annihilated, but Garen reached the point of 2 items and he just started one-shotting everybody.
Game
Um,
3, I don't even think that like GGS or GG, I guess. I don't think Golden Guardians played as bad as game 1 and 2. To me, it's game 3 where I look at BDS just playing well, ganking, and continuing to push that lead through top lane after ganking. It wasn't like Licorice, to me, it wasn't like Licorice was just inting. It was that he was getting fucking ganked over and over again. And Sheo, and well, I guess the rest of BDS was just able to play around Vision. Whereas like in game 1, um mid laner Gory was just not playing very well with Vision. He wasn't getting Vision. He's pushing up in the lane and getting ganked. Like, those are two very different versions of getting camped. Game 3, I give credit to BDS. Game 1, I think Golden Guardians just played like shit.
Yeah, I guess the last point that I'll touch on in terms of the draft, which I think I'm not faulting Golden Guardians as much for, because I think everybody recognized that the meta over the course of the tournament will shift, but the mid lane matchups and what was going on there was just absolutely horrible from the side of Golden Guardians, and maybe people didn't recognize it at the start, but Orianna does seem to be the best mid right now in the game, and they gave it over to Nuke 2 times, and Nuke was also just playing really, really well. I mean, you saw that from the first instance of game 1, where he outplays Gory on the flash prediction. But it felt like, if we want to talk about, if we want to point fingers as to why Golden Guardians lost, I think
Oh, let's point
culprit.
fingers. Who is on trial, J&T? We are pointing fingers in this one because we're angry and we're selfish.
I
Who's
mean, I
on
think
trial?
I Me personally, I would say, Gory number one and then the bot lane
For
number
sure.
two. I
Yeah,
think I think a lot of people will be quick to point to Licorice because, he was going up against the Garen and, especially in game three didn't look very good. But game two was actually exactly what you needed to do against the Garen. Before
yeah,
Golden Guardians sort of, as I said, they sort of broke down in their fundamentals, allowed Garen to get back into the game, get to two items, and then lost positioning of him in multiple fights where Stixxay was getting solo killed by the Garen. So, it's anything. It's for Gory just being absolutely terrible. It's Huhi for being very, very low impact in comparison to his other games in NA. And Stixxay just making these mistakes, which we didn't really see out of him for the majority of Summer Split. Yeah, he started off kind of slow, but towards the end of Summer Split, especially in the middle of the sort of middle and end of the regular season at the beginning of playoffs, Stixxay was looking really, really good and was an absolute monster in the late game. He just never got to that point.
yeah. No, I agree. Maybe I have a little bit less blame on Stixxay. There was obviously the Garen where he tried to 1v1 Garen and Garen shit on him. That's like the most egregious thing. There might be something else that I'm forgetting, but for me, trial is Gory and Huhi are not only on trial, but they are guilty of the charge of inting their freaking faces off. Look, I understand it feels bad for the players, but God, that was really rough to watch. Um, if they're guilty, JT, what's the punishment?
Punishment is getting kicked off the roster for next year potentially. Like,
Oh, man.
I mean, while I think that Gory played very, very well domestically for the regular season for 2023, I think he struggled in the playoffs. In both playoffs in spring and summer. So
Yeah.
if you're looking to make any potential changes to this roster, I think unfortunately Gory would be the man to look at potentially.
I can't believe it, but I agree, and I cannot believe that. That is so wild. Punishment is the boot. Can't we just give them homework? Didn't we say that last week? We said that, like, players, they can't do homework. We should just be punished with,
Okay,
like, a
well,
science
their
project.
their homework is to queue up and play against Garen 100 times in preparation
Yeah.
for next year. That's their homework.
True. Yeah, they have to 1v1 as and against Garen 100 times, and then maybe they can make the team next year. I think that's
And
a
another argument
good
that I also
punishment.
won't stand for is the argument that, oh, you're not very familiar with the matchup, or oh, it's you haven't played the matchup that many times, so it's understandable that you don't know when you can get one shot and stuff like that. Like, there's only one avenue for Garen to kill you, which is for you to get in range of him. And Golden Guardians made that mistake way too many times over the course of the series for me to
Yeah, I
absolve them
agree.
of the quote unquote cheese again, if you want to call it.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, I'm with you 100% because Garen has existed forever. I understand he's not played in pro a lot. I get that, but it's not a secret what he's going to do. It's very straightforward. There's no flashiness to it other than hitting the flash button on top of you. That is it. He runs flash like every other champion has in the existence of League of Legends. Like, it's not, yeah, I don't know. It sucked. Yeah, definitely Bean Soup Award for Golden Guardians. And then on the other side, I think Adam played really well. If there's one thing, I can't even pretend like it helps me cope that well, but one thing that I'll say about this series that I actually think is really rare is that it did go exactly according to plan. Not as far as the outcome, but as far we talked about like the X factors, right? And everyone was pretty much the community was in agreement that this game was going to be decided around Adam from BDS. And I don't know if everyone said Gory. I remember I definitely said Gory last
You
week
said
for
Gory, I
Golden
said
Guardians.
River.
Okay.
Yeah.
But pretty much the went the game plan. And I feel like we've been doing this podcast for like 3.5 years now. I feel like nothing ever goes to game plan in League of Legends. Like very, very rarely. But this series actually kind of went how it was supposed to, as far as where, rather, which lanes were deciding uh, the BO5.
Well, and I even remember back when we made our predictions in our previous episode, I said if Golden Guardians pulls up with the same form that they did towards the end of the playoffs, they're going to get annihilated, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what happened. It did felt like, unfortunately, we didn't get to see any improvements from Golden Guardians. Maybe they did make some, but we only got to see them for 3 games, so we won't really ever know if the team was better than what they showed.
That's where I'm feeling stupid, and I'm sure I'm not the only LCS fan that's feeling stupid. We all believed they have a month, things will turn around. They've looked good the whole year long, things will get better, and of course they didn't. And that's probably why, like, that on top of waiting a month for this freaking series to happen and then watching it be that quick. Like, how was I supposed to just go to sleep after that? It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was fucking fuming. I was so mad.
Well, the last thing I just realized, which we haven't written it down yet, but as always, we must give a score to Golden Guardians
Oh,
because
no.
they're dead now. So,
Oh, they are dead. I didn't think about that at all.
but despite the poor performance, I know we're doing these on the fly here, but I think despite the horrid end to both the summer split and the World's Qualifier Series, I'm still gonna roll with an 8 for Golden Guardians.
And this is a score of 1 to 10 for how their year went.
Yeah,
I can't go 8. Like, I get why you say 8 because, like, most of it was really, really good, but what teams care about the most, Jinter, is
you're not
championships
wrong.
and international performance. Coming into the year, I could see an 8 from that, and that's a lot of times how I look at it. This is just, like, pure disaster, though. This is
Yeah.
like you were good for all the times that don't matter. I guess MSI. They were good at MSI even though they didn't really go that far. They showed up, they played good. They took a game off BLG, I think it was.
Yep.
5? I'll give him a 5.
And maybe an 8's a bit too high, but I mean, a 7 is probably fair. I think trying to eliminate some recency bias. This is a team that never made the playoffs in their org's history in the 5 years they'd been in LCS up to 2023. They made
And they
playoffs
finished
both
above 9
splits.
and 9, right? The 9 and 9 curse was
They
broken.
made playoffs both splits. They went to MSI. They went to the World's Qualifier Series, ultimately lost. But in terms of a success, I think this was definitely an organizational and a team success for Golden Guardians this year, while the players may still be feeling quite disappointed.
Maybe it's recency bias and maybe because like it still hurts, but even a 5 feels really generous for how disastrous this was, but maybe that's my anger speaking. Um okay, so Golden Guardians was my team and now they're out. Am I allowed to be in love with NRG again or no?
I mean, you can, but they might
I
disappoint
feel like
you.
they deserve better than me though.
Yeah, probably.
Like I didn't believe in them, you know?
I didn't either. So
So, okay, what if they go winless? If they go winless
if
in
NRG does,
yeah, in Swiss, if they go winless, then like we deserve each other, because I didn't believe in them, but they also then sucked.
well, I mean,
Can I fall in love with them again?
you have to proclaim it now before they go winless. To
I mean, I still love NRG. I just think they deserve better than me,
well, I mean, we'll see. The Swiss stage is going to be good, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves because while this was the first
Yeah,
time we ever saw the World's Qualifier Series, when Riot did announce the World's Qualifier Series back at the beginning of 2023, they said that there was going to be changes coming in 2024. And
yeah.
people shouldn't forget, there was some domestic leagues that normally did appear at the World Championship and at MSI that did not appear this year. But the LCL and the LCO did not have any international representation over the last two international tournaments, and you wonder if they're going to be brought back into the fold next year. And for those who don't know, LCL is the Russian league, which was suspended way back in 2022 because of the Russia-Ukraine stuff. And then the LCO, which was newly formed after they got rid of OCE when the whole NA merger thing happened.
Yeah, but there's still a good chance that the LCL is not back next year, right? Because I mean, I don't
Maybe,
know if
but who
people
knows?
follow that stuff pretty closely. I keep relatively well informed on it. We'll say. I don't think that's ending anytime soon.
I'm just
At
saying
least it's
it's
not
a
looking like it.
possibility because they
Not
have to
not by next year.
at least, because if they run the league, they'll still have a representative appear in an international event. It's just a question of
Yeah.
if the league is going to play any games because they haven't played any since I think it's 2022 spring.
Yeah.
So
Um. What was my other question? Oh, what did the league used to be called? Is what I wanted to ask.
it's always been
Before it was LCL. Before, wasn't it
it's
something else?
it was always something like that.
I thought maybe it was like CIS. Or am I making that up?
Oh, actually, that sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds right. Not gonna lie.
Oh,
So
okay. Anyway. Yeah. Okay.
I think
So.
you know what I think the region I believe is called CIS, but the league itself is named the LCL.
Oh, okay.
I
Anyway,
think that's what
so
you're thinking of.
we have reason to believe that this world qualifying whatever is coming back next year. We think there's a chance there could be more teams in it. Does it feel, or would it feel wonky to do like it's almost like a play-ins for play-ins? Like now that you
Yeah.
like before it was just one best of five and like the viewership was great. Do you have the viewership number? I don't have it offhand. I just know it was really good.
Yeah, I think the peak viewers was like 646,000 or something like that,
Like that's really fucking good,
which
isn't
is,
it?
I believe, more than both regional finals for NA and EU.
Like
Not together, but
that's
individually.
no, but that says something though. That really says something. Not to mention the times to watch it were terrible. Not to mention the games were terrible. I mean, if you were on Europe's side, you were having a great time, but you get my point. Like the game, it's not like we had a best of five, silver scrapes and back and forth 40, 50-minute game banger. No, the series was done quick. And usually viewership grows a lot over the course of a series, especially when it gets to 5 games. I guess what I'm saying is they have something here. Clearly, North American and European fans have, uh, I guess, made it clear that they will watch if they have NA versus EU, which we don't get a lot of, which we actually will be getting more, foreshadowing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like they'd be crazy to not run it back. It makes me wonder if it's going to have the same hype if it's just like another whole play-ins with multiple teams just to make it to the play-ins with the multiple teams. Like it feels like you're really um I don't know, having too many games perhaps?
Yeah, and I guess the other question is, if more teams are involved, does it sort of become its own dedicated thing that potentially has its own time and location, not being at the World Championship? And what I mean by that is, for example, if there are, this is pure, this is a hypothetical, but let's say there's 4 teams in the World's Qualifier Series next year. Obviously you have to play at the very minimum 3 best of series in order to find out who's going to win. I wonder if that's sort of an event that might happen in between the conclusion of regional finals and the World Championship, as opposed to putting it right at the beginning. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it maybe becomes, something that, Eastern, you fly to some location that's in and around Worlds. It's near Worlds. It's not right at Worlds, but it's some other event that lasts a couple days that, gives a chance for another sort of location to host some sort of tournament. So I feel like there's a lot of possibilities that they can go with this. This obviously depends on how many teams they decide to bring in and also the timing of it all. But I feel like as you mentioned, it was the World's qualifiers series felt like a success.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Main priority for me is just put it at a better time. Imagine if people are watching it in the middle of the night and they're, staying up to watch. I guess on the West Coast you didn't have to stay up that late, but it started at midnight here.
Yeah.
That's not a good time. Starts at 6 a.m. in I think Berlin. Like also not a good
Yeah.
time. They're probably going I feel like they're gonna see the success of it and be like, let's put this in a prime time thing. People are going to watch it, and yeah, I think they'll run something similar back, or let's at least hope they do. Okay, before we move on, just want to remind people to subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Hit the like button, spam that thing, leave a comment. We read them every week. That all that stuff helps us tremendously, guys. It helps recommend YouTube to promote our content to other people and help us grow. We need it a lot. We need it a lot. Yeah. Also, episodes. Next week's episode is not at a normal time, right? It's on Monday. It's a day later. So
Yes,
we
that's
apologize,
correct.
but next week's episode will be one day later than usual.
So
And then
Monday
after,
night, Tuesday morning type thing.
right. And then after that, I think we're back to normal schedule where we're back recording on Sunday evenings once again. And you will get your Monday content as per usual. So just
Uh-huh.
1 week of a little bit of a hiccup. Okay. Play-in stage, Shinter. I'll let you start with this one. What did you think of the play-ins this time around?
Dude, I thought that playing stage was great. I thought there was a lot of good matchups across the whole board. The only series that I thought was, boring or like not good, if anything, was probably the R7 versus PSG one. But I thought I mean, I guess in DFM also, DFM kind of underperformed the entire tournament. But I didn't realize at the time, but I only found this out through watching the broadcast. But DFM wasn't playing with their full roster. They had Udapon, as everyone knows him, at the 80 carry for DFM, was actually their top laner in the summer split. And they had a different 80 carry playing 80 carry. And so, yeah, I didn't even realize that.
I remember being really confused because I think last week we mentioned it. I remember saying like, "Isn't Udapon their top laner?" It's like that's weird. And then they're playing and I see Utapon not their top and I'm like, "Did I just, like, troll everyone that's listening to CFP?" Like, they're gonna think I'm an idiot or something like that. And so I went to double check, and yes, of course he was, but yeah, they had some roster issues or something there. But yeah, Utapon was I mean, he's played AD carry before, so no issues there.
Yeah, it was just
But
more their top laner was clearly struggling. He was a last minute replacement. Didn't play at all in the summer split, so not surprising that they struggled, but unfortunate because the LJL and DFM normally produces a bit more of a fight.
I found myself way more invested in play-ins as it went on, just because BDS didn't look like obvious favorites to get out anymore. And like that was my only thing that I could hold on to cope was if BDS didn't make it. Of course, they ended up making it out, but like that's what kept me interested. Honestly, what I didn't think that plans were particularly all that great when I'm watching Loud versus Gam, for example, or R7 versus anyone for that matter. Like it was kind of eh. Um, the BDS PSG series was great. That was a really good series. I think to me, I do think those two teams are still the two best teams, but because BDS choked earlier in the play-ins, it led to them playing each other and not having both of them being able to get out, right? And that's I guess that's just something that happens in play-ins sometimes. But yeah, they got the reverse sweep and ruined my pickums.
Dude, I don't care if I sound like an idiot saying this. I don't know. I think Team Wales was still the best team. Like they lost, but that team was actually really good, I thought. If not for just a couple monster int moments that ruined a lot of games, similar to Loud, I thought this team was actually really good. Like I don't know. I can't tell if I'm just like still coping in my own head or I am just absolutely a crazy person, but I thought the Team Wales looked really, really good. I think I would pick Team Wales over either PSG or BDS if they played.
Interesting, interesting.
And I
So
don't
like
even
many
and I
people,
don't even think Gam is that good. I just think that Team Wales was constantly making mistakes in the series and ended up losing the game. They had game, what was it, game 2 or was it the first game? Team Wales had the first game or the second game wrapped up in a bow, and Bean decided to sprint it like Croc did in the mid game 2 times and turned the
okay,
game.
this was my problem with play-ins was whenever I thought someone was like playing well,
They
then they
just
would just like
inted. Yeah. They just
yeah,
inted.
and it wasn't just like with one or two teams. It felt like it was like that with almost every
Yeah.
team. The obvious ones, the very big standout ones were the ones from Loud,
Yeah,
especially
Croc
because
was doing
uh,
some bad
the,
things. Oh
the
no.
difference was that to me, I thought Croc was just bad the whole tournament. But like when the tournament started, Route, their 80 carry, whatever the hell his name is, was fucking 1v9ing. And I'm like, holy shit. And then he ends up inting like a couple games later. I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, Robo, I'm watching him. I'm like, he's popping off. I called him shit last year and he's actually looking really good. And then he starts to sprint it. I'm like, oh. So it's like anytime I got like impressed by somebody or invested in someone, they just turned to shit after. And so I had such a hard time. Same thing with Bean J as well. Like I had such a hard time pinpointing who I could actually have confidence in playing good regularly throughout the thing. The only guy to me that stood out was Adam, and even he had an in game or series, but like most of it was really, really good from Adam. To me, Adam was like hands down the best player in play-ins. But even he had the one hiccup game. I can't even remember which one it was, but I just remember thinking like, "Holy shit! I can't follow one player without them just proving me wrong once I think they're good."
Yeah, I mean in terms of best player, I don't know, hard to say. At the time, in the midst of watching the GAM Wales series, I thought Sparta was playing really, really well. He got the better of Adam. I mean, it was kind of it was relatively even for the most part in the BDS versus Wales series, but I thought Sparta was looking really, really good. It felt like the top lane play, and I guess top lane in general at the World Championship seems to be a very big focus, just because of the variety of champions you can pick. We kind of do have your kind of basic default matchups of like Renekton, Cassante, and stuff like that, but you also have the Adam type champions are in the meta. Set, Darius, Olaf. We saw a couple of other teams whip out both Darius and Olaf. I think Robo played a game of Olaf. There was one other person that played Darius, I think. I don't remember who it was, but
I
I
couldn't
guess
tell you.
the other player that I also thought was playing really, really, really well, who I thought could be in that running for best play-ins player, was Maple. If I had to pick my top 3 players in play-ins, I think it would be Adam, Sparta, and Maple. Maple, unfortunately, uh, kind
I
of
wanted to
the
reclaim
team
him.
the team fell sort of the team fell apart around him in that series because
Yeah.
Maple was playing really insane.
I wanted to reclaim Maple. I was like, oh my god, I forgot how good this guy could be when he's not on TSM.
I mean,
Sheesh.
yeah, I mean, TSM just let him go. Also, like,
Talent suppression machine.
yeah,
The meme never stops. Also Ozzy, the top laner guy. I felt like in game one, I remember him playing the Kennen. He had so many good flanks, but they were never able to clean up anything with it. But I remember thinking like he's getting these really good Kennen ults and good flanks off. The team's just not capitalizing on it. And like those are team fights where if they're cleaning up all those kills, everyone's talking about how Ozzy or Aji or whatever the hell how you say his name, they're praising the hell out of this guy for having the tournament of his life. It's just like they just didn't have enough damage all the times where he's finding these really creative flanks. So I thought he deserved a shout out too.
yeah, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that BDS PSG series was all but over in the third game. I like basically stopped watching it, and I was
It
like,
looked like it a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie. I basically stopped watching, and then was like, oh wait, BDS won the game. I was like, I guess I gotta turn the series back on. Like, and then I, watched the rest of it. But I thought PSG had that shit locked up.
Last thing I'll say,
Also, my pick'ems, one reverse sweep. I picked the one. It's only one's
yeah,
ever happened. Which was last year. But
that upset me too. That
my
made it
dude, my
worse.
pick'ems are looking crispy after the playing
Okay,
stage.
pentakills, let's go,
I
right?
know we're
Pentakills.
already at 3, so
Nautilus
easy.
has to be leading in deaths. I don't know if that's true, but
I
like,
think I was looking at some Reddit posts. I think Renekton is actually leading, but
oh,
There,
thanks,
there,
Robo.
there was somebody who was like posting updates after each set of games in terms of what the leaders are.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, a lot of the event pickums and like the game time reverse sweep, dragons, Cloud's leading. All my event pickums are looking on point right now, and a couple of my champion ones as well.
I'm surprised Renekton's leading in deaths. I know he's played a lot, but I think that champion's busted. The amount of times that people commit to trying to kill Renekton and he just doesn't go down. I don't know. Maybe I think that champion's stronger than it actually is,
I
but
mean, it's probably just because he's the most picked champion, also.
yeah, I think he's busted. Busted. Okay. Should we talk about Swiss? Because we got some really good series coming up.
Yeah, I guess the only last thing just to say about plans, because I don't think we said anything about this team whatsoever. Jimian, the mid laner for CFO, who previously I didn't even know this, played for 100 Thieves Challengers. So
Oh, that's
another
right.
instance of NA Academy mid performing well when not in NA Academy. So just another bit to that narrative.
It is interesting. And it's not a new phenomena or anything like that, but it is interesting to see how good or bad players get based off of just where they go to a new region or whatever. Like it is pretty wild. Um,
I
I
didn't
mean, yeah,
realize. I mean, I didn't realize he's originally from there as well. I believe, or at least his nationality is that. So I don't know if it was a situation where he'd previously been playing in that league and then went over to NA to play in NA Academy and then ended up coming back, or if NA Academy was his first sort of. I'm not familiar with him, but he was getting a lot of hype, and I think rightfully so because he was playing really really well, especially in that Wales series. I thought both CFO and Wales at the time were looking really really good, so I thought the fact that Wales ended up beating them was, I guess, another bonus for Wales in my eyes, and why I was disappointed that they didn't beat GAM because I thought that team looked really good.
okay. We good to do Swiss now?
Yeah, I guess
Is
we
this where
can.
we start with the region discussion? Who's the better region, or how do we
Yeah,
wanna
we
do
we,
this?
we can definitely lead with that.
Let's trigger the fuck out of everyone. The better region out of obviously it's the LPL or LCK. The better region is the LPL, right? JNT 250.
Yeah, the LPL is. I feel like you have to give the LPL the slight edge, mostly because of the way that the LCK summer split ended up playing out. Most specifically with T1 underperforming in summer split. Obviously, a lot of that is due to Faker missing the majority of the games with a wrist injury or hand injury, so he wasn't playing for. I believe it was 8 or 10 games, or 8 to 10 series they played without Faker and had the other, I forget his name already, Poby or something. And obviously Damwon or D plus underperformed. Showmaker maybe not looking as Showmaker as he has been over the course of the last 4 seasons, but obviously still a very, very strong player. But when you look at the LPL, I mean, JDG, best team in the world right now, one MSI, BLG right behind them, LNG, a team who underperformed in spring split, got a lot better in summer, made finals, took the fight to JDG, while they ended up as a third seed, not the second seed, I think everybody is especially fearing them as a third seed from LPL, which a lot of people believe they have the best player in the world right now in Scout.
What's So here's what's interesting to me is I think back to last year, I'm pretty sure we both said LCK last year. And not just with us, I remember Dom and a bunch of other LPL fans were all pissed off saying no, the LPL's better. And then they kind of had to shut up after the two finalist teams were both from the LCK.
Well, there was three LCK teams in the top four.
Right. And I feel like this year we're going to get the opposite and piss off all the LCK fans. But I don't know if I'm still cheering for China, but I definitely think that they're better. So here's the way I look at it. I have the top seeds, JDG and Genji, kind of neck and neck. I think that they are definitely the two favorites, which is not a that's no hot take, not a big surprise. I do think I give the slight edge to JDG, mostly just because of how good their team fighting is. And I know people are gonna be like, bro, Genji can absolutely team fight. And I do, I'm with you. I don't think I've ever seen a team fight so well around an 80 carry like they do with Ruler. And not only do I think they are insanely good, I look at LNG as not far behind them. I know LNG is not the 2 seed, but I rewatched the LPL finals. LNG looked really, really neck and neck with this team. So I guess the way I'm looking at it is I see China coming into this with two number 1 seeds, and I don't see the same thing from the LCK. T1, obviously, they had a hiccup in the middle of summer. That's something to be concerned about. Yes, they bounced back and looked a lot better, as playoffs went on. But even still, once they made it to finals, they just got swept 3-0. And they lost 3-2 to Genji like the series before that. So, like, they can obviously put up a fight with Genji. But when I see that being so one sided, I see Faker is not where I think he once was. I don't think Carey is having as good of a year as he did last year. And even last year, when they were as good as they were, they still weren't good enough to win Worlds. It makes me have a little bit more doubt in T1. And obviously, my team being KT, well, they lost to T1. So I look at T1 and KT as just not at the top tier levels as Genji, JDG, and LNG. And so that's mostly why I give the slight edge to the LPL, despite the fact that, and I think this is also obvious, but despite the fact that I think you can be a number 4 seed and still win worlds just like we saw last year, right? I'm not discounting Weibo, I'm not discounting D plus. Just to me, the three favorites have two from LPL, one from LCK in my mind.
Yeah, I think when you make the statement that one region is better than the other, most people will initially jump to the top of the teams that are in that region and be like, well, I mean, JDG won MSI last year, and BLG, I think, was it BLG that beat Genji in the lower bracket finals of that? So I think initially, when we might say the LPL is better than the LCK, people might push back and be like, well, Genji is really, really good. And I think that Genji is really, really good. If, if we want to go back to the pick'ems, I pick Genji as my winner for Worlds. So, and I think they're pretty much level with JDG, but as you sort of outlined, the reason for having the LPL over the LCK is the second, third, and fourth seeds from those regions. You look at T1, kind of already outlined their struggles in the summer split, and they're coming into this tournament not as strong as maybe everybody believes. Also, with D plus not looking as solid. KT, obviously a very, very good team in the regular season, but then struggled in the playoffs. And you look at the
Yeah.
LPL, and like you said, JDG, BLG, and LNG, I think all are basically a number 1 seed at this point. Like, I view all three of those teams as a number 1 seed.
Yeah. Me
And
too.
I don't view any of, as you said, I don't view any of the LCK teams as a number 1 seed. Not T1, not close.
Just because KT and D plus are my two LCK teams, I'm just going to touch on them a little bit more. Um, to be optimistic for the side of KT, all their players were freaking all pro, right? Like they were all absolutely beasts. And honestly, they're all on like upwards trajectory, right? So like Cuz was kind of sprinting it in spring and then had a really good summer. Pretty much everyone had a really good, all of them actually did on the side of KT. BDD had a terrible year last year. BDD looked really, really good this year. So like you could kind of look at KT and point to an upward trajectory all the way until when it really matters, playoffs, right? If a team doesn't show up in playoffs, I have a hard time putting them as a tournament favorite, even if I really love that team. When it comes to D plus, you mentioned Showmaker not looking like himself. I would say Canyon is also thrown in the same thing, even though Canyon had a much better year than Showmaker did, and his we'll call it drop off has not been as significant. It's still noticeable that Canyon is not what we saw last year, same or last 3 years, I guess. And same thing with Showmaker. However, we can't just forget what these two did at Worlds last year. You were there, Jinter, watching that quarterfinal series. Yes,
Best
they
series
didn't
of
move
all
on,
time.
but they put their team on their back in that series to pick up the 2 wins that they did. Yes, they didn't move on, but like guys, they played at a world championship level, and so I don't think you can just forget that these guys can absolutely turn it on when the games really start to matter.
And
So
they
I
have
don't want to
the
discount them either.
they got the plot armor as well. They have depth on their team.
True, they have depth, gods,
Mhm.
god, if you will. Yeah. Um. Who did we not talk about
Well,
yet?
I was gonna say last team to touch on is Weibo, and they're basically the ultimate wild card of this tournament because you go back and look at some of their performances in the LPL Summer Split. They were. I'm trying to think of a good LCS comparison for them. I mean, I feel like
I got
NRG
one.
is actually a good comparison because
Okay.
they beat a lot of the top teams, but they also lose to a lot of the bottom teams. I think Weibo, I believe, I want to make sure I have this right. Weibo was the only team to beat, other than BLG. Weibo was the only other team to win games off of JDG in the
Okay.
regular season summer. Not counting the playoffs, I don't think Weibo even made it to the. I think they lost in like the first round of like the real bracket of the
I've got
LPL
it here.
playoffs, but in
I've
the
got
regular season
they
they were the only other team apart from BLG to win against JDG in the regular season.
yeah, I'm just looking at it. Weibo beat Ninjas in Pajamas 3-1.
NIP is
Um
in the LPL. I forgot about that.
yeah, they lost to LNG 3-2 though, actually. So that's not terrible in the losers bracket side of
Hmm.
things. Like that's not that bad losing to LNG. I mentioned how I think they're really fucking good. So um the little bit of games, so I went back and watched I don't even remember. I watched two other series. I can't remember. I don't think one was NIP. Regardless though, what I did notice was the Shy still plays similar to how he always had, like Omega aggro. He's going to play in your face. And when you mentioned, is there an LCS comparison? Immediately mind went to Summit, actually, where he's going to absorb a lot of pressure. Sometimes he's going to run it down, but sometimes he's going to completely take over the game. So if there's an LCS equivalent, I would say it's probably more like Summit. I just haven't watched enough LPL this year to say if that's like a consistent thing, but definitely in the couple of series that I was watching, he was very much Summit esque, where he's going to play
I
like
was
an
just mainly
animal.
saying from the team perspective because
Yeah.
from what I had heard, yeah, they were losing to a lot of the bottom teams, but beating, not necessarily beating, but taking a lot of games off of some of the top teams as well.
Okay. And then also, don't forget Xiao Hu. That guy's always a monster. Love
Yeah,
Xiao Hu.
dude, I don't
Swiss
know.
Army knife. He'll play
I
anything.
feel like this guy is like got to be the most underrated player of all time or something. I feel like
Is
this
he though?
guy.
Because a lot of people give him a lot of respect. Like, maybe he is
I don't know.
underrated. I don't know.
Maybe that is the case in just terms of like a general, like as a general person to be talked about. I feel like nobody talks about him. Obviously, you have like your fakers, your defts, your Uzis, your showmakers, your whatever. In terms of like all time performances and whatnot, and being at that highest level for a long period of time, and I feel like Xiaohu just isn't talked about like that. But
Yeah, you might be right. You might be selling me on that a little bit. The reason why I just
this
don't see
dude's
it that
really
way is
good.
because I always talk about Xiao Hu when it comes to
And
international tournaments that he's attending. So maybe not in my head, but you might be right that like when we hear discussions about the list of players that you mentioned, Xiao Hu is usually not mentioned with them a lot of times.
I also won't ignore the narrative because I think a lot of people who do watch the LPL have been saying that he hasn't been playing very well. But dude, this guy has been at not every, but the majority of international events for the last 8 years or something. This guy will be fine at the World Championship.
I hope so. Love Xiao Hu. Love that guy. Uh, okay, so we wanted to kind of give like it's maybe admittedly an arbitrary number, but just to give an idea of as far as how good we think the regions are. I kind of got China taking this at about 55% chance of China winning the winning worlds, and then maybe 40% or something like that. Yeah, 40% for LCK and then 5 for the rest, I think was something that I think we talked about this a little bit, but approximate, is that a fair
Yeah, pretty
assessment?
much. I think both of us, we sort of have the LPL having the edge over. And if we want to put a number to it, it'd be something like LPL 55% chance, LCK 40% chance, and then the rest is about 5%. But What I'll say about the
Yeah,
rest,
5% might be even generous.
to be, yeah, definitely. But if anything, the rest for me really only includes G2. I don't
Yeah.
think there's another team out of all of the EU teams, the NA teams, and then GAM. I don't think there's anybody apart from G2 who I truly believe can take games off of some of these top LCK and LPL teams. I think
Yeah.
it'd be some straight coping.
Okay, well, hold on, because we've seen like even North America every once in a while makes a miracle and takes a win off of these teams, just not nearly consistently enough to move on and to actually win worlds. So that's why we're
Yeah.
keeping them off the list, right? Like Golden Guardians did beat BLG at MSI, for example. That things, yeah, you get my point here.
Mhm.
So I do completely agree. I think if it's not LPL or LCK, then I do think it's a really high chance that it's G2. Some really good things out of G2, right? So the first thing that has to be pointed out is even though they look really good, they're only playing European teams, right? So that's something to take into account. Um, with that said, they do look hands down the best team in that region, and there's a lot of reasons that you could point to, right? Like Mickey comes back to G2 and didn't take him long to find an MVP. He ends up getting the MVP award in summer, I believe. Broken Blade, he pretty much since we've learned about Broken Blade has been one of the best top laners ever since he went to TSM and then he went over to Europe and somehow is still getting better. Like Broken Blade had a really good summer, um, or playoffs at least, and then Caps as just the goat of Europe still twice has made it to the finals. I'll remind people like this guy has shown up on the big stage before, and that's another reason to not forget about G2, right?
Yeah, a lot of content creators and stuff like that were doing their own sort of personalized top 20, top 25 lists, and Mickey X was the only Western player that appeared on anybody's list, basically. And I think that will be very important going into the tournament, especially when I think I mentioned this in our last episode, and I also 100% mentioned this during MSI. The bot lanes at these international events are absolutely insane. Like, all of them are good. All of the best teams have insane bot lanes, and even some of the teams who we don't necessarily view as the favorites have insane. Like Guma and Keria, the majority of people do not view T1 as a world championship favorite. Their bot lane is still Guma Keria. Like, that
Yeah.
bot lane is nuts, and the fact that G2's bot lane, I think, can dance with some of those other bot lanes. I think I thought that Cloud9's good at MSI. That didn't end up being the case. But, I think G2 can do it. And they also did do it at MSI. So,
Okay, this is so stupid, but we were talking about G2, and then you brought up T1, and it made me think of the stupid cactus.
oh, yeah.
The
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 Caps
cactus.
Cactus.
Yeah. So maybe I wasn't paying attention to the video enough. Was there a good reason why Caps gave Faker a cactus?
I didn't watch the video. I just saw the screenshots of it. So,
I watched the video and I still have no idea what it's about.
I wonder if
He said
there's like
something
some
about
deeper
unkillable
meaning to
demon
it.
king. He said something about that, right? The unkillable demon king thing. Um, but I still Faker gets him like a jacket or something, and he returns him with a cactus. I get, while I'm thinking about it, Jinter, what could they have given Faker that would not have been troll as fuck?
Faker doesn't need anything. He can get anything he wants. Dude is like
So just a
probably
nice,
one of the most famous people in Korea. So,
isn't a cactus what you get someone for like
like a
a
housewarming
home?
gift.
Yes, that's the word I
Because you
was
don't have to
looking
water
for.
it.
Yeah,
Because you get people plants and then you don't water your plants, so you just get a cactus.
yeah, that is. God bless them, because I don't know if they were trying to be funny, but if they were, spot on. We should talk about the North America teams.
Yeah, I mean NA's at Worlds, they made it there. Golden Guardians did not, so only 3 teams instead of 4 teams, as opposed to the LEC, the LPL, and the LCK. Um, they, I don't know how good of a chance they have. I think
Let's just
coming.
say it as it is, man. It's not looking good. Okay, it's just not, and that's normal, right? We come to expect that. I would say coming into this world's expectations are lower than last year's, and last year did not go good either.
Yeah,
Every team went 1-5.
it's funny because I would think I would say the same, that expectations this year are probably the lowest they've ever been, but that could also be viewed as a good thing, because I think similar to the likes of 2018, especially when it comes to Cloud9, when they had nothing to lose and no expectations on them, that's actually when they managed to pull it off. So I think
A
other
lot has
teams,
changed
well, I'm
since
just saying, I
2018.
think other NA teams need to take some inspiration from that and be like, nobody expects us to win any games. So let's just
Yeah.
go out there and YOLO it a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed since 2018. Mostly, it feels like what do you think about this? It feels like 2019 was the year that people really lost faith in North America. Like North America's never really
When
done really well at
2019, you
Worlds.
said?
Yeah,
What happened then?
that was Europe, and none of our teams got out of groups.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was right after 2018. Cloud9 went to semis, and then we thought, hey, we're not that bad of a region, and then we got clapped in 2019,
Yeah, but I think
and
again,
ever
I
since,
can't remember exactly, but I also remember the groups were very hard to get out of. Like Cloud9 had Griffin and G2 in their group. TL had Damwon and IG in their group. I don't remember who the other
yeah.
team was. I don't remember who they had in their group, but
And
I
2020, that was '06 TSM.
yeah,
Was that
I
2020 or
was gonna say, if anything, I feel like 2020 was the year when people started to lose faith, just because that was the year with the TSM '06 and all teams failed to get out and whatnot. I
yeah.
mean, all teams failing to get out is not a surprise, but especially when the records are so poor. And unfortunately, it also does feel like NA has been progressively getting worse and worse since 2018. If we count 2018 as the high, we've kind of just been going downhill. And
As happy
unfortunately,
as
I
I
don't think that's
was
going to stop.
as happy as I was for NRG getting that win, it really hurt my faith in what I thought should have been our best team, Cloud9, right? Like that's I feel like a lot of North American fans are going to look at that and go like, "Oh shit, Cloud9 was supposed to
Maybe C9 is
be."
just playing 5D chess, though, because they don't have to face Weibo in the first round.
There's plenty of ways we can cope, right? That hey, that was Cloud9's wake up call, or hey, NRG, they're sending a bunch of fresh players who haven't been to Worlds in forever. Maybe they don't have the weight of like just pure doubt on them of oh, we've been here and just gotten clapped before. Like maybe there's just like that fresh, uh, what would you call it? For like a player like Palafox who's never been to Worlds before, who's going in with no expectations. He's probably not like all that stressed out about the stage being too big for him. He's just like, whatever, man. Like maybe that could be a good thing. And I realize
Blank
that's
pages. Just got to
that's
fill them
so
in.
cope. Yeah, yeah. I realize that's very cope, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that mental could play a part in it, right? It has
I
to.
think what we're describing here is NA just needs to approach it from the mindset that they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, we say
Expectation.
that every year
No,
though.
but at a certain point, when you do send number one seeds to the World Championship, regardless of NA's performances, the number one seed of NA is usually expected to win some games. Whether or not
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean get out of the group, but just win some games and look competitive. And that has not been the case the last 3 years. NA number one seed has continued to struggle. And I think that they really just need to approach all of NA. They need to approach it from the mindset of we have truly nothing to lose. I think I would rather, like, I know I just flamed Golden Guardians for being like cocky and taking a really wonky draft approach, against BDS, but I guess the reason why we were so upset about that is because Golden Guardians, regardless of the fact, were relatively even compared to BDS. Like, they probably could have put up a much better fight drafting standardly than not. So
maybe.
I feel
Yeah.
like, if anything, I want the NA teams to do what Golden Guardians did in the play-in stage and just be like, fuck it, we're doing some wacko shit, not PSG wacko, some actual wacko shit,
Yeah.
and just say fuck it.
Yeah. I'm also really afraid for APA. We'll get into the matchup in just a second, but
APA, yeah, okay, okay. I mean, we
I
might
mean,
as well. Like, we're kind of there
yeah,
at
yeah,
that point. So,
yeah, okay, we should.
well,
Okay, let's get into their first matchup. It is kind of funny that the first guy he's going to run into at Worlds will be Faker.
yeah. So for the people who didn't see, the Swiss stage draw happened right at the conclusion of the BDS PSG series, and I initially had this wrong. I didn't think that there was any regional restrictions on the first set of matches, but there is. No team from the same region could be matched up with another team from the same region. And the first matchup obviously is TL versus Team Liquid. Anyways, Faker versus APA. It's going to be a rough one. If anything, if we want to truly, truly cope, for APA and Team Liquid, we better hope that Faker is not 100%. And I say that begrudgingly because I hope that is not the case because obviously everyone knows I'm a big Faker fan. I want T1 to do well. And unfortunately for Team Liquid, they're going to be the sacrificial lamb to this T1 snowball, hopefully.
Okay, and rather than do a deep dive on all of these series, let's just try to pick one way that this series could go down. And let's be positive. Let's be positive for TL. If they're to win this game, how the fuck is it happening? Are
Um,
you putting Piosik on like Kindred or something?
uh, yeah, I mean, I guess we put something like that. We need to. Piotr needs to reverse the script from the World Championship finals and just steal all the objectives. That's what needs to happen.
Hmm.
He needs to go
Okay.
from missing smite on every objective to hitting smite on every objective. That's how they win.
And APA's got to be playing Nico or what? Ziggs?
Yeah, Nico or Ziggs, I'll take it. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, if he picks, I mean, I'm truly scared for APA. I have no idea what he's going to pick. You know, if we're truly trying to be Team Liquid analysts here, like APA needs to have made big improvements over the course of the LCS playoffs to at the World Championship because he was massively struggling against the likes of MNS and Palafox. And if you're struggling against those guys, you're going to get absolutely dicked by
M-
Faker and others.
My fear for APA. And just to be clear, I'm not fearful of TL losing to T1. I like that's not something I fear. That's just expected to happen. My fear for APA is that he goes to Korea and realizes, "Oh shit, I'm miles and miles behind these guys," and gets discouraged. That's the only thing that I don't want to happen. I don't care if they lose all their games. I don't care if APA gets destroyed. This guy was not even like a pro like a year ago. Wasn't he in college or some shit? So
I don't
like
know.
I just hope that he's not discouraged by how bad this might be. I hope that he looks at it as I'm going up against the GOAT and I'm going to solo kill his ass and does his best. That's all you can hope for.
Again, that's what I was saying. From you just need to approach it from the mindset that you have nothing to lose. Like the
Yeah.
expectation is that APA goes out there and gets smashed, and if that happens, like obviously that would be horrible, but people would be fine with that.
Okay. So we expect T1 to win this one. What's the next one?
Next one up is C9 Mad Lions. So for the NA versus EU sort of storyline here, I feel like we got the perfect outcome.
Yeah, this was the best case scenario
Yeah, in terms of Cloud9 draw, this was the best case scenario for sure.
because it could have been KT, LNG, or MAD. Couldn't have been
Yes.
TL because they can't play your own
Yeah,
region.
so definitely.
Yeah.
We sacrificed Team Liquid and NRG for Cloud9 to get the 1-0 start.
So similar to Team Liquid, my concern again is the mid lane. MNS has not looked. Let's not let's say he hasn't been reliable as he was when he first joined Cloud9. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. That's my main concern with Cloud9. Aside from that, I think there's good reasons to be concerned on the side of Mad Lions. Like Hillisang is either going to be a beast or he's going to run it down. Like he's fucking coin flip, and I feel like you get that just with Mad Lions in general. So like, yeah, this probably is our best matchup.
Not specific to this series in particular, but you kind of mentioned MNS underperforming, but Fudge as well,
True.
underperforming the entirety of Summer Split. And I think he was a player whom gave Cloud9 and Cloud9 fans a lot of confidence going into other international events, whether it was MSI this year or Worlds last year. Fudge was playing really, really well. And
His international performances have not been good also. That's
well,
been his I
I
don't know
guess
what you call it, but
I guess we should hope for, since history would tell us that if he plays well in the LCS, he'll be shit at Worlds. So now that he's played like shit in LCS, now he's gonna play well at Worlds.
precisely.
Uh-huh.
If we actually want to make predictions on this, if we're actually making real predictions,
Well, whoa.
I actually
I feel
do
like we are
give
making real predictions.
yeah,
Hmm.
so I know I'm almost always NA biased brain, but I actually still do give the edge to Mad Lions mostly because of how Cloud9 showed up in finals. I kind of give it like a 60-40 for the side of Mad. What do you think?
I don't know. I guess I'm wondering what's giving you confidence to even rate them over Cloud9 in the first place, considering they were so wonky for the majority of 2023.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, like I mentioned, the finals. It's not a lot of confidence in Mad. It's a lot of less confidence in Cloud9.
I mean that's fair.
M&S has not looked good lately. Berserker even got gapped at finals, at summer finals. Like that's not a good sign at all. Fudge always struggles at international tournaments. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm rocking the Cloud9 stuff right now. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I
I feel like Cloud9 still has the edge despite the poor end to the summer split. No, if anything, I probably have it 60-40 in the opposite direction for Cloud9. So Cloud9.
yeah. Okay. Next
Next
up.
up is probably the series that we need to talk about the least about. And it's not even a series; it's just a best of one. Genji versus Gam. Gam is going to get absolutely butt blasted.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, just slightly back to what I was talking about them in the playing stage. I wasn't necessarily impressed by Gam. I think, I guess to their benefit, they just made less mistakes than Team Wales, so that's why they advanced. At least, kind of that's how I saw it. Obviously, that was just watching the series in real time. I have not looked at the series apart from watching it just last night. But it just felt like Team Wales made more mistakes than Gam, and that was the reason why they lost, and ultimately the reason why Gam is here.
This feels like, so you know how we just did the T1 TL series and like we fully expect T1 to win that series, but like we were at least able to think of, oh, this is how TL would win it, mostly just because we know Team Liquid and what they play. I don't know enough about GAM to even make that scenario. Like it doesn't exist in my brain. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist in Blue Jay brain. And so Gold or Gen G is just going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that Gam could win this would be a 5-0 ace at level 1. Maybe.
Yeah.
And even
So
at
what?
that, they
Pick
could probably still
Morgana
lose.
and Nautilus and who are all the really good level 1 champions? Braum.
Yeah, Braum. So we have Braum support, we have Nautilus mid, we have Morgana jungle, we have Mordekaiser top lane. He's the best level 1 top champ. He's the best level 1 ADC, some
No,
lethal
no, no.
tempo
What
champ.
about Aatrox level 1
No, no,
top?
no. Mordekaiser's most OP top champ
Oh,
level 1 has to be.
oh. I don't know. I just thought like you get 3 Qs. I don't know.
I don't know. Passive on Mordekaiser. Too strong.
Who are we, what lane we missing? Level 1 or rather AD
Something
carry?
ADC, some lethal tempo. Caitlyn
Draven?
ADC.
Oh.
Caitlyn maybe
Isn't
with lethal.
Draven strong level 1?
I mean, not really, because you only have.
No.
I think axes take too much time to ramp up.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're Caitlyn, you just bush headshot them on repeat with lethal.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah. What? So they have to pick Braum, Caitlyn, Nautilus mid, Morg jungle, and Mordekaiser top.
Got it.
There we
Okay.
go.
Good plan. Next.
I actually, this is another series that is kind of a write off, but yeah, JDG versus BDS. BDS is probably gonna get annihilated.
Yes. I mean, what can you say? You hope
I
that
don't
Adam
think
picks
there's a
something
lot to
crazy.
say.
You hope that Adam picks something crazy, right? And goes like ape shit crazy but it's just like this isn't Golden Guardians. Like JDG will laugh when he locks in Garen.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we didn't really talk about this too much when it came to the playing stage and BDS's performances, but Crowny has not been looking the best. You know, I think there's
True.
been a lot of talk about him being nervous. He said that in interviews multiple times, and I feel like continues to get brought up by both the broadcast and the co-streams. You know, I've only primarily been watching the Doublelift Media sneaky one, but I assume it's getting mentioned in others. And he has had a couple of moments here and there over the course of play-ins where he hasn't looked as strong as he does in the LEC. And he's going up against Ruler. So for
I
those who
want to
watched
talk about that.
MSI, you know that Ruler's gonna pwn him.
I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's interesting and I do feel for the players when like they get nervous, right? And they don't feel like they can play like themselves. I guess what I am wondering, and this is a legitimate question, is how long can a player be nervous before we just say that they're just not a good player? Because when do players prove that they're good players on the big stage in the games that matter, right? If you can never perform, maybe it is because of nerves, but if you can never perform on the big stage, maybe you're just not that good of a player. And it sucks that it has to be a mental thing, but like mentality is part of the game, unfortunately. Like some of the best players in the world are the ones that thrive on the big stage, are the ones that have good mental and never tilt. Like that's part of being a League of Legends player, unfortunately. And I guess the other thing is, how am I trying to say this? I guess what I'm saying is, why does Crowny get a pass as for being nervous, but like Croc doesn't, for example, right? We looked at Croc sprint it, mind you, like Crowny did not look nearly as bad as Croc. But I'm just saying, like Croc, everyone shits on him because he looks terrible. At some point, that's going to have to catch up with Crowny as well.
I mean, I guess the only thing I would say to that is we also saw him play like garbage at MSI 2023. So like, or was that it? Because it was the when he was playing Sedge and he forgot to buy items. Remember that whole thing? Like,
Oh my god, I forgot about
so
that.
like I'm just saying in terms of an argument, like that could be the argument as to why like the narrative is that of Croc and not Crowny, because this is the second international tournament we've seen it from Croc.
But wouldn't you say that someone that forgets to buy items is nervous?
Oh, for
Probably,
sure. Well, there
right?
was somebody else in one of the series. I think it was in Gam versus Wales. They forgot to buy items. It was the Gam mid laner, but then he ended up noticing it with like a minute left and recalled.
I know this is
But it
probably
almost
sounding
happened
like
again.
this is probably sounding like I have something against Crowny, and I think we should all flame the hell out of him. That's not the case at all. I have nothing against Crowny. It's just at some point, if you don't perform, whether it's nerves or not, people are going to criticize. You know, I hope that he finds his game. I really do, and that like there's no longer this talk about, oh, it's his nerves that got to him. I want him to just be able to play his game, and hopefully, because there's no expectations against JDG, hopefully we get to see him play his game. That's what would be nice to see, honestly.
I don't think we explicitly stated it, but we both have JDG, obviously.
Yes.
Next up, I feel like the matchup that probably everybody is the most excited for in terms of a storyline standpoint is G2 versus D plus. Obviously, a rematch from the various times they've met previously at the World Championship, most noticeably in the quarterfinals in both 2019 and 2020.
Oh god, yeah. This series is going to be hype.
I'll come out and say it. I got G2 on this one.
You're gonna say G2. I don't blame you for predicting G2. God, I know I'm gonna regret this. I'm going D plus for the record, but I'm afraid that I'm gonna regret it because this is one of those things where, similar to how I expected Golden Guardians to beat BDS, it's like if I'm wrong, I'm gonna be like, you saw D plus not playing very well, you idiot. Why are you predicting them?
Mhm.
I can't ignore how they looked last year at Worlds. And yes, I know they only made quarters, but let's be real. Like that series was almost like a finals. It was crazy. It was two really good teams. It's not like they just got bent over by I don't know Gam or some shit. So I guess what I'm saying is I do have faith in Showmaker and Canyon to perform now that it's World's main stage. Need to add the caveat that yes, I am a Showmaker fan. Well, I'm a D plus fan. I love Damwon, so there's bias there, and you can take that and run with it. I'm going with Damwon. I have faith.
Yeah. I think that that G2. I think that they'll make it out of Swiss. I mean, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I mean, we kind of covered it a little bit when we were comparing the regions. But G2 is pretty much the only team apart from the LPL and LCK teams that I truly view, that has a chance, at the tournament. And I think that there's even some areas that G2 has the advantage over D plus just individually. And I think that's not something you can normally say about Western teams versus Eastern teams. For the
Were you
most
thinking
part,
top lane?
top lane definitely.
Yeah.
And I think mid jungle could easily be in the favor of G2 if we do not see the. I mean, again, difficult to say because we've seen it over the course of the last 3 years. The
Yeah.
normal Showmaker and Canyon godlike synergy.
And just to help you out a little bit, like yes, we've seen that over the last 3 years, but
We
more
haven't seen it
recently
at
we've seen
all
them
this year.
struggle. Right,
Yeah.
we've seen them struggle more recently. One thing that I'll also add about D plus, this is my recollection. Someone feel free to fact check me on this if I'm wrong. I feel like D plus the whole summer split was the bar where like they would lose to all the really good teams,
Yeah, they
but they
were
would
like
beat
10
the
and 8 or
rest.
9 and 9 or something.
Yeah,
That's
they would beat all the rest. So it's not like their version of struggling is just not beating the really really fucking good teams from LCK. So like I don't want people to forget that this is still a good team. Yeah,
Next
should be
up,
a good one.
we got NRG versus Weibo. Like I said, Weibo being the ultimate wild card for this entire tournament because they obviously have a very high ceiling, but also a very low floor. This is
Yeah.
maybe the spot where NA could get away with one, and I'd be down for it. I mean, I'm still picking Weibo, but I think this is the spot where if NA and NRG need some luck thrown at them, or if this is this is the game you need to win that's going to help you make it out, you got to win this game.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. I'm also going to predict Weibo, mostly because I feel like one of the weaknesses to Weibo would be the shy. Like I mentioned how like he's not inting nearly as much as he used to, but I don't see Dokla being able to take over that lane. Now I did think that Dokla was going to get clapped at NA finals, and he actually hard outperformed Fudge on the other side. I think this is a different animal. I think this is a different test.
Yeah,
I would love to believe in NRG. I really would. I just can't. And the best thing is that every time I don't believe in them, they prove me wrong. So let's go, right?
exactly. We're just setting them up for success.
Yes, as good NA fans do.
And then
Yeah.
next up, we have Fnatic versus LNG. I think we kind of outlined this during the regional discussion, but while it is the LPL third seed, they do not feel like a third seed. So I have LNG
Yeah.
probably winning in
Me
pretty
too.
dominant fashion, and I think normally I'm always of the opinion that Fnatic is going to play better at international events than they do domestically, but I guess I don't necessarily know if I can follow that same logic with this new iteration of the roster. And part of the
Have we
reason is
figured out?
because they're so young. Like Oscar Renan never been in an international tournament. Razork has always struggled internationally. No surprise there. Humanoid is the one sort of shining light on this roster when it comes to international performances. This guy, for the most part, always plays well in international tournaments. Unfortunately, he's just going up against who a good percentage of the league community view the best player in the world right now in Scout. So I think the consensus 1-2 or 2-1 in terms of best player in the world is Ruler and Scout. And while Humanoid is probably the best player on the Fnatic roster, especially going into international tournaments, unfortunately going up against Scout.
I have not looked into any updates to know for sure who is playing in the top lane. Have you? Like, do
They,
we
they,
know
they
that Oscar
haven't
Renan is
they haven't explicitly said anything, but it was assumed that it was Oscar Renan.
okay? I mean, it's not going to change my prediction one way or another, but yeah, for everyone that thinks Ruler is really good, you're right, but don't forget Gala, not
Yeah.
far behind,
Mm,
and Scout for that matter.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess the last thing to touch on is Noah and Trimby. I guess I'm more just interested to see what they look like on the international stage as opposed to them winning or losing. Like, I just want to see them play. I know we have seen Trimby a few times at Worlds, but Noah specifically is another guy who has insane domestic success just individually, and it'll be interesting to see what he looks like up against international competition.
I just want to see if Trimby is still playing the Soraka. I am not seeing it.
Oh, you're doing some solo queue checking?
No, just to see if he's played it in pro because I remember last year he
Oh,
was playing the Soraka.
oh yeah.
I'm not seeing it.
Hmm.
Damn. Oh
So
wait,
what? So what? They
three
gotta
games.
they gotta whip out the
3 games
Soraka.
this year.
That's how they
Three
win.
games this year.
What's the
Yes,
what's the
three
win
games
rate?
this year. 66%. So 2 out of 3.
So we have to pick Soraka. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
And then last up is your obviously your baby right now, which is KT Rolster versus BLG. And unfortunately for your baby, I'm gonna be picking BLG on this one.
Nope. This is the time. BDD is back. And I don't even say that just because I'm a fan. BDD is back. Like last year, he had long COVID. He was struggling. He found his game. BDD's a beast. He's going to show up. Keen, better spring than summer, but Keen's still fucking beast. Okay, this team is good. I know they joked in playoffs. This team is good. Maybe I'm coping. I do think KT is better than BLG. No meme. I'm taking KT.
Okay. I
Yeah.
I feel like, again, just to throw it back to our regional discussion that we had, this is definitely going to be a good litmus test for sizing up the LPL and the LCK for sure. Because I think, especially when you look at this matchup, the individual and how the players match up individually, I think, will be more important to me and more telling for the rest of the tournament than the team play. Because you look at players like Bin, players like Yagao, players like Elk, compare them to the top tier performing individual players in the LCK Summer Split of Keen, of BDD and whatnot. And I think we'll get a like I said, a really good litmus test of what LPL versus LCK is going to look like.
I also want to remind people that BDD is a really good control mage player.
This is
Not
true.
forget.
This is
Let's not
control mage
forget.
meta right now.
Yes. Yeah. Let's not forget what BDD could do. Is man, we're seeing a lot of Azir. That guy's Azir is beast. Okay. Don't discount if you're watching a BDD game and you see he's picking Azir. Don't leave your seat. Watch that game. That is the
Especially
one to watch.
for the LCK as a whole, it being a control mage mid meta is really good for them.
Yeah.
You know, Syndra, Orianna, Azir is all up in the wheelhouse of Chovy, Faker, BDD, and Showmaker. So, if not to go back to that conversation, but if we want to, if anything, favor the LCK over the LPL, it would definitely be in the mid lane. I think most specifically just because of the meta.
Just looking to see what BDD played this year.
Well, it wouldn't be
Most
recent
played.
because there was a lot of changes, but probably
Yeah.
be a lot of
Most
LeBlanc, I would assume.
most played this year was Azir, then Vagar, actually.
Oh,
Vagar and
really?
Annie. I remember seeing a bunch of Annie. His Annie win rate is 83%, by the way.
Oh, are you looking
AJ
over all of 2023 or just summer
Yes.
2020? Oh, okay,
All of
okay.
2023.
I see. Yeah, that's why
Where
Annie would be
is
in there. Please God, no Annie at this tournament. I swear to God, any team that picks Annie, insta loss, insta
his
loss if they lock in Annie in Worlds.
his Syndra is only 25% win rate out of 4 games.
Not a good sample size, even though I think if you look at his
No.
career, it's probably a lot better.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah. KT's winning that one. What else we got, Jinter? What's next on the docket?
That's the last matchup.
Oh, okay. Well, then what are we talking about next? We got Santorin stuff.
Yeah, obviously Santorin announced his retirement. I believe it was either was the day of or the day after the Golden Guardians versus BDS series. I think it was the day after.
Dude, this is just bad news. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe it's bad news. I don't know. Like, okay, Santorin leaving, bad news. I hate Santorin not being in the league. Like, he's
Before
one
you
of my
said,
favorite players.
dude, there was like a slight pause, so it just sounded like you said, "I hate Santorin," because like
No, I love
you
Santorin.
paused for a split second before finishing your sentence.
Okay, bad. Okay, my bad. No, I mean, you know that I love Santorin. Santorin's one of my favorite players. I fucking love Santorin. I hate not having him in the league.
Okay.
That sucks. The biggest fear is that he won't be the last one to leave. Obviously, well, I think we talked about this already, but the word on the street is that salaries are continuing to go down again this year, or next year rather. They were already down this year, and the worry has to be that okay, let's remind people the grind to be a pro player. I know people think LCS players are lazy. The grind to be a pro player, regardless of whether you're LCS, LEC, whatever, it's a lot. And if you're only going to be making like league minimum, guys that have been doing this for a long time probably don't want to commit that much of their life to being a pro anymore if they're going to be making like 75K, right? It's just not worth for them, especially the guys that used to make a million or so. So like the first guy that comes to mind that is like, is Jensen going to stick around? There's many others, but a guy like Jensen would be another one, right? Like they're not going to be able to command the same salary that they once did. Our league can look very different next year. Very, very different.
I mean, you look at the landscape of the league, and then you go and read that Santorin sort of retirement post. And I think a lot of it, I mean, you kind of said it at the beginning, a lot of it has to do with he felt that the grind was no longer worth it. He mentioned in his post about how he's away from his family all the time, and he's, his fiance, like they don't live near each other because for the majority of the season, he's, off doing, being involved in LCS or whatever league he may be a part of for that year. But like we said, to him, it felt like the grind wasn't worth it anymore. And well, again,
Can you blame him?
this is speculation and pure guesswork, but you have to assume that the declining salaries have something to do with that. This is a
For
guy
sure.
who's in his, I guess, if he would have kept playing, would have been going into his 10th year of professional play, I think, 10th or 9th year. And if you're making less money than you did over the course of the last 4 years, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense for you to continue doing that if it's not, one, giving you that same reward internally, both competitively and financially. If it's not giving you that same reward, then it's not worth it. So I
I
just
think
hope, and I think you kind of were saying that a little bit, we hope that this is not a trend that we see in the LCS where a lot of these older, more veteran players who may not necessarily be having that same competitive drive as they were when they were a young player end up leaving the league because there's no, there's not that same financial gain.
I think people are going to laugh at this. I've said this before, and for the record, I don't blame people for laughing at this, but I think any pro, including LCS pros, their goal is to win worlds. And I understand why people might laugh at that because, my God, does that look like that's quite the goal? That it's just not going to happen, right? It's very extremely low chance. If you cannot reach that goal, if that goal looks out of reach, which it really does, and you're not being compensated anymore, and you have to spend what 10 months of the year at least towards playing League of
Probably
Legends,
around 10, yeah.
like I've said this also many times as well that I think the league to be a league player it takes the season is way too long, right? Like if you're like any other sport, right? If you're like a football player, you got a decent off season where you could be with your family. If you baseball player, same thing, right? Like any other sport, you have so much more time to be with your family. League, it's like Worlds happens um in October, so if things are going
Normally,
well,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I should start with pretty much December, right? Because that's when teams start to prep for spring split. So they'll start scrimming and stuff in December and grinding solo queue. Then the league starts around January and they go all the way to about April. Then MSI happens. So if you're doing well, you're at MSI, right? And then summer's right after that. Summer carries all the way over to August. Now it looks like we have this random month off in between to Worlds. Worlds goes all the way through October and into November. Like there's very, very little time off. And if you're only making maybe 100K if you're like a good player, which I that's not a confirmed number for the record. Like that is so much to sacrifice all of that free time for such very little reward because you the main goal is to win worlds. It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah,
Like what is the
unless you're part of those top NA teams, you're not even going to be attending the World Championship, let alone have a chance of winning. So,
right?
you look at a person in Santorin shoes and you look at the landscape of the LCS, Cloud9, they're sticking with Blabber. Um, you know, sure there are some other questions with some other teams, maybe Team Liquid, maybe 100 Thieves, we don't know. But I think it just originally goes back to my first point of the grind wasn't worth it. And I think, you can read between the lines a little bit of his retirement post and, do a little bit of speculation and guesswork, but that's what it felt like to me.
I'm gonna go through because I'm just looking at the list of players that played this last summer split. I'm gonna go through the ones that I think I would not be surprised if I hear they're stepping away. Now, I'm not saying that these players are stepping away. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised, and I want you to let me know if you think I'm just wrong on any of them. Okay, so
Okay.
someday,
Okay.
double lift, um, Sven maybe. If C9 looks for new support and Sven has to go to a new team, is he going to want to do that, or is he just going to be like, screw this? Who else we got? Jensen I already mentioned. Impact has been doing this a long time. Who else we got? Hanser. I mean, he's Hanser XD.
He's not
Wild
going to.
Turtle. Even Core JJ. Core JJ. Who else? Solo. Licorice. Stixay. Huhi. Right? Like
I,
these are
I,
all guys that have been doing this a long, long time.
the
I
only
wouldn't be
one I think I
surprised.
would push back on there is Licorice, and I think that's just purely from the standpoint that his value is probably increased, from over the course of
Maybe.
2023.
But what is an increase to like you might be right for the record, but what does an increase look like nowadays? You know what I mean?
That's a fair question, but I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
anything, Licorice is more incentivized to probably continue than the others players you listed, just purely because he's gotten back to his initial form.
Yeah. And all this to say, sure, maybe all of those players end up sticking around. And if they do, great. But if they don't, our league is going to look very different. And if you think the LCS is already struggling to get viewers, now try taking away the most popular players from it.
Mhm. The point is that there's a potential domino effect that could happen. We're not necessarily saying it is going to happen, but people need to recognize that there is the potential that this could happen,
Yeah.
and that's the main issue here. Because, like you said, not even you don't even have to remove all of those names that you mentioned. Remove a few individuals like your impacts, your some days. Doublelift is obviously going to be the marquee one, but even players like your Jensen, like these are storied players in the LCS whom always get on good teams, and those teams usually have relatively popular. They're relatively popular. So you remove them, and like you said, the viewership's already low. How much lower could it get?
Not to mention, even before the salary drop, we already lost Bjergsen.
Yeah. And he's obviously not coming back.
Yeah. Anyways, uh, definitely worth noting, I guess, is the
Yeah.
reason for bringing this up. I know a lot of the times the conversations we have on this podcast happen to be doomer ones. It's just the I don't know, it's the way things are going right now. I don't know what else to say. Like this is a very
We try
unfortunate reality.
we try to keep a fairly positive spin on things, but sometimes there are problems and we need to talk about those
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah. What's next on the docket?
Yeah, we got some quick news to rifle through. Not a whole lot, so we will try to keep it quick, even though it never is. First up, Rekkles and Fnatic both announced that they are parting ways. Rekkles is no longer a part of the org, and that
Hmm.
he's really only looking to play support. He did mention that he is willing to play ADC, but that is not his preferred option. So I think more likely than not, we will see Rekkles on a support role in the LEC in 2024.
I'm just so surprised that he's more looking for support. I like has he like it almost feels like he's really lost confidence in himself to play AD carry. Like if he thought that he could still play AD carry, wouldn't he just be saying like, "Yeah, I'll play either one"?
I don't know. I mean, I guess did you read the post? I mean, maybe I have
I
to read it.
did. It's been like a week since I've read it though. I
I
did
don't know.
read it.
I guess maybe it could be like that. He doesn't have as much confidence to play ADC, but I think he's just more like looking for a bit of a career switch up as opposed to he's less confident in his. I mean, again, I'm not going to try to go on a big tangent here, but this is pure, guesswork. But it feels like he's sort of shifted his philosophy in League. And I say that because of some of the comments that people have said about Rekkles for the majority of his career, and some of the things that have been said over the last few months since he's been out of the LEC. And then you compare that to what he has been saying during and in the lead up to his support debut, and I feel like it's just more of a career philosophy type change.
It could also simply be just not that he doesn't have confidence in being an AD carry, but he has more confidence in being able to call macro and
Yeah,
call a game that way,
maybe
and
it's
that
the
he
this Ven
feels
type
like
situation.
it's easier for him to do that playing support than AD carry, and he has faith that there are plenty of guys that have the hands to AD carry but don't have the brain to support. Like it could be that as well.
Next up, staying in the LEC, Karamine Corp is obviously in the market of getting to the LEC for 2024, but most recently it's been reported that they are looking to buy Astralis' spot outright, as opposed to potentially looking at a partnership similar to the Koi and Rogue one that happened in 2020. At the end of 2022.
Feels like a long time coming, doesn't it?
Yeah, this shit just it needs to happen, I think, at a
Yeah.
certain point. Like, I feel like if this doesn't happen, before the off season, and the off season is typically somewhere in the middle of November, I think obviously it sort of changes every year, but I think most of the contracts are up by like the third week of November this year. So if it hasn't happened by then, maybe we then need to start being a bit worried, but this has been something that's been talked about for like a year and a half now, and it still hasn't happened.
It almost feels like it's not that hype because it's been hyped up so many times. Like anytime they're gonna get in now, anytime they're gonna be in the
Yeah.
league soon. K Corp, everyone they got a million fans. Just wait, just wait. It's like it's almost like people are just like, yeah, 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 we know.
Mhm. Next up, Griffin, a NA solo queue player, potential competitive prospect, who's been kind of partnering with LS over the last few months. I know he's one of the sort of boot campers that LS likes to bring out all the time to sort of teach them a bit of the ropes in terms of competitive play and whatnot. But he apparently announced that he's joining the T1 Academy program, which isn't necessarily their academy team, which I think the majority of LCS viewers will think that's like their tier 2 team, but it's sort of their developmental team, which is basically like their tier 3 team.
So is this good news? Well, first of all, is it good news? I would say yes, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that an NA prospect joining a Korean team, I think is news in and
Okay,
of itself.
that's what I assumed. I assumed it was good news. But is this good news because hey, cool, we might have an NA player play in the LCK, or is it good news because we can actually make him good over in the LCK and bring him
Mm,
back over?
both, I think. Both.
Okay.
Hopefully he
Which one
plays
do you think is
well.
more likely?
I mean, I think probably the most likely scenario is he plays for a little bit and then ends up getting dropped, comes back to NA, and is probably still good enough at that point to play in NA. Because from what I also know, he's still relatively young. He's only 16 or
Okay.
17 years old. And if
Ah.
I'm still correct that the LCS minimum age is 17, he would be eligible to play next year. Although presumably next year he's going to be training.
Assuming the
He's in his
LCS
training
doesn't
arc.
get like a gambling or drinking sponsor.
Yes, but
I
again,
guess the
I'm not
LCS has had that
exactly.
before though. We
Yeah,
had Bud Light sponsor before. Did that matter?
it would have probably. I don't know. I guess it wouldn't have because it's 21 over here. So maybe something in the partnership or the sponsorship agreement is different than in NA than in the LEC potentially.
Yeah. I forgot that it's 21 over there. Weird champ.
And last up, Cloud9 High. Well, I shouldn't have even said Cloud9 High.
He's
High
back.
is back on Cloud9, so he is now again Cloud9 High. He's
Get out of
apparently,
town. What is he, a mid laner?
yeah, no, he's not a mid laner. I mean, honestly, we could maybe play him instead of MNS because MNS has been doggo. But
Here's my take. They shouldn't have said he's a team manager. They should have just said Cloud9 has signed high and just let people run rampant with what they think has gone on. I think that would have been the best publicity stunt they could have done with this. What do you think of my take?
they should have actually. If they would have followed the meme format as they always do, that's what they should have done.
Yeah, they should have just been like, he's back, and not like he could have been a water boy for all we care. Who cares?
I said last up, I was incorrect. Sorry, there's one more thing. While Worlds 2023 is going on right now, it was also rumored that Worlds 2024, which is being held in Europe, that we already know, it is rumored that the semifinals are going to be in Paris. So
So that
that's cool.
article also said that like London is earmarked, I think was the word. It was a weird word. I think it was earmarked, is
Yeah,
what they said.
because MSI was in London, and basically after the conclusion of MSI, Riot basically said that we're going to be holding another event in London sometime soon. So it sounds like that's Worlds 2024.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why the post was like, "Hey, this is where semis are," even though the actual website link says that it's supposed to be in London. I'm just double checking this to make sure.
Well, one of the stages will be in London for sure. I guess
Significant.
the point was we already know, or at least not that we know. It's heavily rumored that the location for semifinals will be Paris.
This time around, the finals are earmarked to take place in London. Sources
Oh, the
tell Sheet
finals, they said.
Esports.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
mean, they put on a really good show for MSI 2023, so I would figure that, excuse me, that would translate well to Worlds.
Yeah. What I thought was funny about the post is like you see, oh, they've announced semifinals. It's, in Paris. And I was like, so is this just a way of saying you're not getting finals, by the way, Paris? Just before you get
Yeah.
excited.
Because
Like, hey, World is in Europe, but guess what? Paris, you're not getting finals and we need you to know it.
I'm trying to remember, was World Finals in Season 9 in Paris?
I think it was because I think it said that in the article, but I thought I
Hmm.
remembered it being I thought it was in Spain, but
Hmm.
this article, hold on, it's not a long article. The World Championship is set to return to Paris. Previously reported the city, blah blah blah.
Yeah, Worlds 2019 Finals was in Paris. I just double
Yeah,
checked. That's
there
what it
you
says on
go.
the wiki, at least.
Okay, well there you have it.
But that is
Oh yeah, they're
it.
going back. I think this is bad news because the last time it was there, we got absolutely dunked on. With that said, the last time it was in North America, we also got dunked on.
Yeah, and we were there in
So,
person for that. So
where's our best region? Is it Korea? Is there
I
a
th-
world?
I think it has to be Korea because Korea was 2018 also when C9 made the run, and Korea was also in season 4 when two NA teams made it out of groups. That was C9 and
Oh
TSM.
my god.
So yeah, I think how long has this episode been? An hour and 33 minutes. By the end of it, we figured out that actually NA's chances are pretty good this year.
My god, man. I
We're
went from so
we're
doomer to
we're right
realizing we're
region. We're in the right timeline, right region. Good first round matchups. Honestly, dude. I mean, the Swiss draw was pretty good for the most part in terms of I think obviously EU got screwed a little bit because the EU teams probably could have had some easier matchups than what they got, but for NA, I feel like obviously I guess Energy could have gotten GAM. That would have been best case scenario, but
yeah.
for the most part, it's not too bad.
And Also, Cloud9 has those Beast Korea jerseys.
Yeah, those are cool.
Just to follow up with the theme of Korea being our region for Worlds. Those jerseys are fucking awesome. You should get one.
I won't, but that's okay. I mean, maybe if
Why
they go
won't you
on.
get
I
one?
mean, maybe after Worlds is over, they go on sale. I'll get one.
No, they never go on sale.
Yeah, they do. They always put out old shit on sale.
Do they? I feel like
Yeah,
I
they
always
do.
see old shit like
C9
still super
C9 C9
expensive.
always does it. They resell old
Oh.
stuff for low. Bavon, sorry, one of our friends, Bavon, he sent me a link to like the Cloud9 shop in the middle of the year of 2023.
Wasn't that like junk? I thought it was like a keychain or something.
No,
Was it? Oh, it
Bavon said he
wasn't.
bought like 3 C9 t-shirts for $10.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
that's not bad.
they were all like old shirts though, but it didn't matter because I'm
What did
dying.
you
Sorry.
think? What did you think of the Golden Guardians jersey that they had for only 3 of their worst games in their team's history?
I mean, I didn't even see it. So like,
Bro, they
you
were
know,
actually sick. Okay,
oh,
I'll admit they were a little bit bland on the backside, but they had like this cool ass sword. It actually looked really good. And then they put up a stinker, and now it's like,
I,
now you
I
can't run
I
back
didn't get
that
the chance.
jersey
I
now.
didn't get the chance to see it. They got eliminated too quickly.
Well, you should look it up. It looks pretty beast. The TL one's kind of boring to me. Sorry, TL fans. Okay, I don't have anything else for this episode. You got anything else?
Yeah, the New York Jets beat the Philadelphia Eagles for the first time in the team's history. Let's fucking
That's
go.
that's dynamite. I'm happy for you.
There
Okay,
you go.
we'll see you guys next week. Just another reminder to subscribe and another reminder that we will be just a little bit late next week, one day later, but you will get your content. We're sorry to all the Monday content ghouls. We'll get you guys the following week.
Yeah,
And
it's gonna be
also,
a lonely trip. Whatever you're doing on the Monday, we're sorry that we can't
yeah,
be with you.
yeah, you'll be thinking of us though,
Yeah,
and
you
also
will.
remember to like and leave a comment. Okay, this has been episode 141 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. We will see you guys next week.